Hello, we've just released Directory Opus 10.2. This video covers some of the changes since the previous video for 10.05. As always, these are only the highlights, and if you go to the release notes, you'll discover literally hundreds of additional changes. It's about a year and a half since Opus 10 came out, and in that time we've made over 800 changes spread across 7 free updates. Or 37 free updates if you count the beta versions, which anyone can download. We've got a lot more planned for the future, but let's move on to talking about the current version. Directory Opus now comes in 2 editions. The program most of us are familiar with is now called Directory Opus Pro. If you've already purchased Opus 10, then you can open the About dialog and see that you now have the Pro edition. The new edition is called Directory Opus Lite. The Lite edition is for people who want a great file manager, but don't need the full power, complexity and price tag of Directory Opus Pro. On the surface, the 2 editions are very similar out of the box. If we open Preferences and scroll through the categories, you can see that the Lite edition still has a lot to offer, while the Pro edition has even more. Opus Lite is intended for people who want to use Opus, but don't need to do much customization of the toolbars and menus. You can still add and edit additional toolbars, but the default toolbars cannot be changed, and the command editing is more basic. The Pro edition still allows you to change every toolbar and button, as before. Both editions allow you to change the hotkeys used within Opus, but the Lite edition does not allow you to create system-wide hotkeys that work outside of Opus. Context menus can only be edited in the Pro edition. If we look in the Tools menu, the essential Find tool is still there in Lite, but more esoteric tools such as Synchronize and the Duplicate Finder are only in Pro. Integrated FTP support is only in the Pro edition. Both editions allow you to open various archive types and to create and modify zip archives, but only the Pro edition can create or modify 7-zip, tar and, if you have WinRAR installed, RAR archives. Both editions fully support UAC for doing work in protected folders, but only the Pro edition has Opus's unique administrator mode, which allows you to elevate a particular window on the fly and then perform multiple actions without further UAC prompts. Have a look at the Opus website for a summary of other differences, or simply try the 2 editions for yourself. The new version resets the evaluation time limit, so you can install it even if you've used up a previous trial. On machines without an existing Opus license, the installer will ask which edition you want to use, and during the first 30 days of your evaluation, you can switch back and forth using the License Manager. Now for some new features. Let's look at file and folder labels. Opus already supported wildcard labels, like this one which I've used to highlight .back and .psd files, as well as labels to highlight specific files and folders by path. But now you can highlight files using metadata and complex filters. Let's turn that one off and create a new one. I want to highlight recently created files so they're easy to see. To do this, I just need to add a clause to my filter matching time. And in this case, I don't want to change anything else, as the defaults of modified within 1 hour are exactly what I want. Let's save that and try it out. I'll create a new folder and you should see it highlighted. I'm not sure how well this pale highlight will show up on everyone's screens, so let's make it darker. Okay, so with this label, when a new item appears in this folder, it's now impossible to miss it. Filters can now be applied to columns from shell extensions, like this Subversion status column. I'll edit a file so you can see its status change from normal to modified. You can see it there, but it's also easy to miss. I'll also create a new file so we have something with a third status value. I'd like better highlighting for these files, so I'm going to set up a label to do just that. I'm using a red background which I configured earlier, and the clause type this time is shell column, and I need to make that match on the SVN status column. Let me make the whole thing and then I'll explain what it does. The second line should be obvious. It's saying we should highlight anything that does not have normal in the SVN status column. But if we only had that line, then we'd also highlight files that had nothing at all in that column, which is not what we want. The first line fixes that by only matching things that have at least one letter in the status column. And that's done exactly what I wanted. I'll edit another file and save that change. And you can see it's come up red straight away. And the same happens if I create some new files. I'll use Windows 8 for the next part, just for a change. I've set my default lister to open 3 folder tabs, as you can see here. If I double click a folder on the desktop, it opens a new window by default. I can drag that tab into my old window to join the two together. If I double click the folder again, Opus will now switch to the tab that's already open instead of opening a new window or tab. If I split the tab back into a separate window, Opus will still find the correct thing when I double click on the folder. However the window or tab was opened, Opus will avoid opening a redundant window or tab if the same folder is double clicked again. By the way, I've configured Opus so that if I close this window and open a new one, I get back to the 3 tabs I had at the start, instead of the tabs from the last window I closed. Now, let's tell Opus that we want double-clicked folders to open in new tabs instead of new windows. As I've already got a window with 3 tabs open, when I double-click a folder, it will just add a 4th tab, as you'd expect. But what happens if there isn't an existing window? By default, you get a window with just the folder you double-clicked in it. The other 3 tabs from the default lister do not appear. If you want those tabs from your default lister to always be there, even in this situation, then you can now do that using a new Preferences option. Let's give that a try. There we are, the new window opened with the folder that we double-clicked, in addition to the 3 default tabs. With the old default toolbar, changing between details and thumbnails required you to go through a menu each time. We've changed the default toolbar now to make this more convenient for most people. To get the new version, right-click the empty part of your existing toolbar and choose Reset to Defaults. The old menu is still there on the arrow, but the main button part now acts as a single-click toggle between Details and Thumbnails modes. If you don't want to reset your whole toolbar, you can make this change by hand instead, and it's a very simple command. You can also change the command if you wish to make it toggle between different modes. In Thumbnails mode, there's a new option to turn off labels. You could combine that with the old option to turn off borders, and then be able to focus on just the images themselves with no labels or other adornments. It's common for file names to end up with brackets in them. It's also common to wish to filter on such names. Unfortunately, brackets have special meaning within wildcards, and this trips a lot of people up. As you can see, the filter bar will now help by showing a bubble message when you type certain characters, and this reminds you that you need to add a single quote in front of them if you wish to use them literally. The filter bar's partial matching option allows you to type a string and see everything with that string in its name. Here I've typed the string files, and it matches both the program files and program files x86. If I turn off partial matching and type files again, it no longer matches anything. I need to explicitly add a star at the start of the string to make it match program files, and another star at the end if I also want it to match the other folder. Both modes have their uses, and in the new version you can now leave partial matching on to get the best of both worlds. Now, if you type a pattern that begins or ends with a star, the filter bar automatically assumes you want to use an exact prefix or suffix match and will temporarily disable partial matching. And of course, when you want to use partial matching, there's no need to type the extra stars in the first place, so this change does not take anything away. Dates columns now default to sorting the most recent files to the top of the list the first time you click their headers. To see the oldest files at the top, click the header a second time. Similarly, size columns now default to sorting the largest files at the top on the first click and the smallest on the second. If you preferred the old defaults, go to Preferences, Display Fields, and look for the fields with the triangles next to their names. Select each one and toggle the Reverse Standard Sort Direction checkbox. If your hard drives are set to power down when idle, it can be annoying to open a new window that happens to point to a powered down drive and then have to wait for that drive to spin up. The new version has an option to avoid this, and you can configure that in the same place as the similar settings for CD-ROMs, network folders, and so on. The last thing I want to show you is a new way to make buttons which do different things when run from different folders. To demonstrate this, I've made this Auto Archive button. I've got 3 folders here with music, photos and other stuff. Note that I don't have any other windows or tabs open at the moment. Let's go into the music folder, select an album and click the Auto Archive button. And let's do the same with one of the photo folders. I'll open the dual file display to show you what just happened. My Auto Archive button zips up the selected folders and sends them to this backup area, but it doesn't send them to the top level, so I'll turn on Flat View Grouped so that you can see below each of the folders. When I used the button on something below the music folder, it was zipped into the Audio Backups folder. When I did the same below the Photos folder, it was zipped up into the Image Backups folder. Let's do a few more, with the backup area open this time, so you can see the zip files as they appear. Feeding music albums to the button will zip them into the Audio Backups folder. Feeding photos zips them into the Image Backups folder. And anything else is zipped into the Other Backups folder. This is done using the new ifpath and ifpathR command modifiers. These are similar to the old keydown modifiers, which allow buttons to run different commands when Shift, Alt or Control are held down. You can match by the exact path, or you can use regular expressions, as I've done here. So that's all for another video, and I'll see you in the next one.